Hello and welcome to Last Mixtape. My name's Stephen White, and on this week's show we look into Mo Chara, court protest and the Irish voice in Britain. But first, not my words, but the words of Kneecap this week in Dublin's Fairview Park as he performed live to a rapturous audience following the court case of Mo Chara in Westminster only the day before. Why, dear listener, and indeed, dear viewer, were we just listening to the words of Kneecap at the start of this week's show? Well, this week I thought we'd delve further into the court case of Mo Chara as we see Kneecap further using the Irish language to subvert the British Empire, and how the Irish voice within the halls of British power has always been a thorn in the side, especially when it comes to art and especially when it comes to music. This is a story of the colonised versus the coloniser. Walking down Marylebone Road, the crowd roared. Not just cheers, but chants. Free Mo Chara, free Palestine. Flags flashed, Irish and Palestinian red, white, green and black. It could have been a rally, but it was a courtroom entrance. Inside, Mo Chara, real name Liam Og O'Hana, stood before the magistrate under charge of terrorism. At a November gig, he waved a Hezbollah flag, shouted support for Hamas and Hezbollah. A video from the Kentish Town Forum last autumn, now evidence in a UK court. In less than 10 minutes, bail was granted, unconditional, but the real fireworks didn't come from just outside. They also came from Mo Chara's legal team. They signalled next hearing in August he'll speak in Irish. That means the Irish voice will be heard within the UK courtroom. There were scenes in the courtroom as the magistrate explained the situation, asking did anyone know anyone who spoke Irish, with those in the court pointing towards Mowgli Bap as he watched on. A humorous yet powerful moment within a day charged with both. So yes, Mo Chara walked free this week, but the real courtroom drama will happen when he speaks Irish in their court, demanding that they understand him through his own language. Which brings us to the thesis of this week's episode: Irish voices in Britain that express themselves through music and protest. The voices of the colonised versus the coloniser. Against the backdrop of hundreds of years of oppression and indeed the attempted erasure of the Irish identity, that identity came walking in to the courtroom. And it's interesting that that moment is constructed by an artist. Somebody who, in their interviews since this has all kicked off, has said they're more like South Park. They are a heightened version of things that the British Empire do not want to look at. They are a heightened version of things around them. The British government has said that this is not about Palestine or the bands sticking up for Palestine or protesting about Palestine. They're saying that it is about terrorism charges. We all know that that is most likely not true. And one of the most dangerous things is when artists speak to power. And now that can sometimes sound cliche, but in this moment, it is very literally what is happening. In a courtroom in Westminster, Irish lads from Belfast with an Irish name, Liam O'Hanna, is speaking to the British Empire and demanding that they hear him in Irish and that he be heard in Irish. The Irish voice within the diaspora of Britain, and I come from the Republic of Ireland, so I'm very much looking at this from the outside looking in, has always been a thorn in the side. Governments and politicians are always unnerved by art and always unnerved by protest art because it's one of the few things they can control. The freedom of expression has always belonged to the people, and therefore it is the most dangerous thing to them. They cannot control what the youth or what anyone else listens to, and if there is a swell of support for Kneecap, and there is, and indeed a growing interest for Kneecap and their music within Britain itself, even within British teenagers who may themselves not have Irish heritage, and they might be starting to understand some of the sins of their country, is very, very interesting. And that has been brought to life by three lads from West Belfast, one of whom wearing a balaclava, going to court wearing that balaclava is such an important cultural and artistic moment, and one of the few things that can only come from the arts world. Indeed, you only have to look back at how when John Lennon was protesting in America, how Richard Nixon had him his phones tapped and things like that. It's always seen as the artist as something uncontrollable, something that could start something different and start a cultural movement. Scenes outside the courthouse, that is especially true. And then you have to give it to Kneecap in this way because they are centering Palestine in the conversation. This is very much about Palestine, regardless of what the government says. This is about them protesting. As their manager said on RTTV, the national TV station of Ireland here, that this is the British government attempting to stop not only Kneecap, but any other band that thinks of protesting. It is indeed a witch hunt, and it's very powerful to see that Kneecap and their legal team have made this about language, about speaking, about expression, very literally through the Irish voice. Mo Chara's trial isn't the first time a thick Belfast accent shook the walls of the British institution, and it won't be the last, because the Irish voice in Britain has never just whispered, it has howled, it has laughed, it is sung. In 1976, punk exploded on Britain's streets. Bins were on fire, the youth were out of work, and the Queen still smiled from every coin in her pocket. But behind the safety pins and slogans, something else was tearing its way through the noise. The Irish accent. The undertones were from Derry, stiff little fingers from Belfast. They were writing truth. About boredom, about bombs, about surviving the day. Songs like Alternative Ulster and Suspect Device weren't slogans, they were warnings. The undertones had a teenage joy, but under it was a tension only someone raised under helicopters and checkpoints could understand. John Peel called Teenage Kicks the perfect song, but it was also a perfect code. Irish, defiant, hook heavy, and heavy with context. Same year, across the water, another Irish voice was getting louder. John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten, was a son of Irish immigrants from Cork. When he screamed with red hair, God save the Queen, it wasn't just anti-monarchy, it was post-colonial rage with safety pins through its lip. Then came Shane. MacGowan didn't hide his Irishness, he set it on fire and flung it through a pub window. With the Pogues, he turned the London Irish story into folklore. The sickbed of Cuchulainn, Thousands Are Sailing, Fairy Tale New York, songs that breathed the pain of exile. He wasn't rebelling against Britain, he was dragging its ghosts into the light. Oasis then came with the Irish voice in the British working class. Wrapped in parkers and hung over on top of the pops, Irish Manchester lads with something to prove. Working class noise in a country that preferred its Irish quiet. Fast forward to 2022, Fontaines D.C. drops Skinty Fia, a phrase used to curse in Irish. A whole album about diaspora. What happens when you leave home, but home never leaves you. Songs for Irish people living in a city that doesn't always see them until they're shouting. And now, in 2025, standing in a British courtroom, speaking Irish, on trial for a chant, but really on trial for tone, for nerve, for daring to shout something the Empire doesn't know how to translate. From Johnny Rotten's snarl to Shane MacGowan's broken teeth to Mo Chara's grin. The Irish voice in Britain never came as a whisper, it came as a clash, a chorus of people too proud to stay quiet, too haunted to assimilate, too eloquent to be ignored. And indeed, that heritage is why I've been mulling over this since the court case began, and since I heard that Mo Chara wanted to speak in Irish in the in Westminster in the court case when it happens in August. And I think, look, we were speaking about there just in that section, there was a reference to obviously Johnny Rotten, who himself has come out against Kneecap, but I feel that's kind of immaterial in the sense of it's Johnny Rotten. That's kind of what he does. He kind of speaks in that way. And look, if we're going to talk about free speech and freedom of expression, he has every right to say whatever he wants to say about Kneecap. But I do find it disappointing that somebody who at one point, some 50 years ago now, spoke up against the monarchy, spoke up against the empire, is now itself kind of sticking up for it, or in a way maybe just saying things like that in order to be heard, in order to be maybe seen as relevant all these years later. As well, in the section, I was also going to speak a little bit about the Smiths, but I decided it would be better to speak to you about it here, because they are, Morrissey and Johnny Marr, both of Irish descent. I see somebody who's written about that, Irish, English blood, Irish heart, or the other way around. So he's very definitely spoken about his Irishness, but himself as well, a problematic figure whose views on British nationalism and has made him problematic in that conversation. But it has to be said, they were Irish voices from Manchester making music. The Queen is dead and stuff like that, and I do believe he has kind of anti-monarchist feelings, but it's better to kind of talk about that stuff here. And we've talked about the death of the author before, and I'm a big fan of the Smiths. I'm not a fan of what anything Morrissey says now, but we're talking about the right to defend, and we're talking about the right to have a voice. So I would not in any way say that he can't say those things, because it's very important that he's allowed to say those things in order for Kneecap and people like that to be allowed to say things. And that is the conversation and the discourse of music, isn't it? The importance to me of that, of Kneecap, an Irish rap group from West Belfast, rapping about the generational trauma and the aftermath of the Troubles in the Irish language, being brought to court on terrorism charges from videos that are way, way back, and also being said that, this isn't because of Palestine and we're not trying to cancel you, we're not trying to get you thrown off festivals, even though they have been. That attempt to censor, and also that attempt to augment what the conversation is about, which is about the genocide of the people of Palestine. And it's incredible, and it stands to Kneecap, which are just, as you say, three young lads from Belfast standing up against the empire, and in a way that is David versus Goliath in a lot of ways. But that kind of defiance and Mo Chara saying that I'm a free man is a powerful moment, especially him in the Republic of Ireland, in the capital, in Dublin, saying that, in front of an Irish crowd. And I do believe vehemently in the freedom of expression and Kneecap's right to express themselves. As I say, taking that generational trauma of the Troubles and putting it through the filter of modern Ireland and modern Northern Ireland and modern Belfast, and indeed modern life itself. We were speaking about some of that last week with the Fontaines episode. And so I think that's what's so powerful about it. That idea of expression versus oppression. The colonised versus the coloniser. Making them having to speak, or having to understand rather, the Irish person through the Irish language. And that's something that Kneecap have been doing throughout their career. And that's something that is why they, I think, are the catalyst for so much of this. They are obviously not the only act, or not the only people to be protesting for or advocating for Palestine. We've seen the Murder Capital, we've seen the Fontaines, Lancome, all these Irish acts do it as well. But it's interesting that Kneecap are the ones that have kind of been the catalyst for a lot of this, and indeed are the ones being brought up in court, where that freedom of expression has been attacked. And we've spoken about it before, and I've spoken about it before, that idea that politicians not understanding context, or rather betraying not to understand the context of art and the context of performance. And you see that in the way people speak about this as well. You can't just say these things and these things happen. Performance in and of itself is a context. The stage is a context. A film is a context. This is context. All of it has a context in and of itself. They are different contexts, yes, but they are in and of themselves context. We were talking about, as I said, some people within that we were just talking about there that I would find whose points I don't agree with anymore. Johnny Lydon and Morrissey. I don't agree with them anymore, but I do agree with their right to perform. I do agree with their right to express themselves. And if they want to put those thoughts that I do not agree with through art, they're more than welcome, in my view, to do so, as are Kneecap allowed to do so themselves on stage in that performance. They've spoken about the idea of them being a kind of a heightened version of the world around them, kind of reflecting back what it is and that the world is. And that's a lot of the time what artists do. Not all the time, but a lot of the time artists take the world around them and turn it up to 11, as it were, and make us look at it, make us look at that heightened version of it. I said on a couple of occasions, and I don't mind saying it again here, I don't think people on the right understand art as well as people in the middle or on the left. Because I think when you're at that far right kind of idealism, I think you need things to be literal so you can get angry. And that's the world we live in at the moment. There is a lot of reasons to be right to be angry. What's happening in Palestine is most definitely a reason to be angry. Genocide is most definitely a reason to be angry. But in this world where we need instant gratification, we need to just instantly grab at things and point at things and say, this means this, so X means Y. It means that the subtext of art, or the subtext of Kneecap themselves, as they say, that generational trauma, that idea that they have portrayed, and that heightened version of life that they put through their music, cannot be impeded by a government, cannot be brought to task by a government. Like, the idea that would limit anything, that any artist that would like to reappropriate anything within art would have to go to a court and to either have to be allowed or to speak for themselves or anything like that, especially with people that I don't trust to understand that. I do not trust a judge to understand it. I do not trust a politician to understand it. And to be very real, and I'm sure they're lovely people, I don't trust lawyers or solicitors to do it either, to be perfectly honest with you. I certainly don't trust politicians, any of them. I've said it a million of times. So I don't want that. One of the reasons, and as I was saying in the previous segment, one of the reasons why people like John Lennon was, watched by the Nixon administration, why the Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen, was put to number 2 when it actually was number 1, is that art is one of the few things that governments cannot control, and they would like to. This is the mission creep of all of this. I think I saw an interview with James from the Murder Capital, where he said that, we're in 2025, but it feels like 1939. And that is the idea that it's this kind of mission creep of, it's Julius Caesar, isn't it, in the way? It's, I will relinquish power when Rome is free of all its enemies. And it's the idea of, we're only doing this. We're bringing these guys to court, and we're punishing them for performance, and we're saying, it's not because of this, it's because of this. But don't worry, we'll only do it in this occasion. We'll only open this door. Then that's complete bollocks. That is complete bollocks. I'm sorry, but if you believe that, I have a bridge I'd like to fucking sell you, because that's never where it stops, and it won't stop. Mo Chara and Kneecap are, whether they like it or not, and I feel for the lads, I really do, but whether they like it, they're on the forefront of something that no artist should really be put in, which is having to defend free speech and freedom of expression, not just for them, whether you like them or not. I do, but if you don't, it's not just for them, it's for everybody. As I say, once that door is open, it will forever be opened, and there's no way of closing it, and you don't know who's going to walk through, and you don't know who's going to post-conceptualize it. The band that you like, the art that you like, may be the next thing. We live here in Ireland where we do not have a very popular government at all. But to be perfectly honest with you, we don't have popular politicians here. So what's to stop one of them getting in charge, or the current regime getting in charge and going, you know what, that song that was Anti-Fianna Gael or Anti-Fianna Fáil, by Fontaines, actually that's politically dangerous, and that might incite this, so no, you can't do that. That piece of art that you made that was against the Catholic Church and their oppression of the Irish people for hundreds of years, that's actually kind of dangerous. We don't like that, but we're only doing it for your good, doing it for you. Don't worry, we'll relinquish power as soon as all your enemies are gone. So it's a powerful moment, and I think it's incredible that the Irish voice is part of this, and it's gratifying in a way that it is that. Again, I'm sure the lads don't feel that way, but here they are, and you have to give it to their bravery. They've seen it through. There are other people who we have seen who have backed away and went, oh no, well actually what I was kind of just saying is they have been to it, they have been for it, and it's great to see. And I think that's partially, to me, I think that's part of the reason why the British government really feel uncomfortable with them. One, it's them, as I say, about, Shane MacGowan and dragging the ghosts of Irish culture for the British culture to see and to see is one of these things. It's bringing light to something that they'd rather forget, rather pretend didn't happen. You might be British and have no Irish cultural background and be watching this, and there might be things about that you've learned from either Kneecap or from watching this or whatever that you did not know about Britain, because you might not have been taught it in school. It might have been something that completely bypassed you, but it is real, it is there. The erasure of the Irish culture, the erasure of our voice, the erasure of our stories, the erasure literally of our name. And I saw it, one of those far-right British news sites that some of the far-right in Ireland, Irish nationalists weirdly like, was using his the anglicisation of his name. You see people going, well, that's his name. It fucking isn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, it fucking isn't. You know, like if we're talking about Vladimir Putin, we don't anglicise his name to Vernon, Power. So it is his name. Liam O'Gohana is his name. Mo Chara is a stage name. And so don't give me that shit. But I think that's when it's kind of rattled that they feel this is dangerous enough to try stop. It's dangerous enough to try stop, and it also is a convenient way of moving the conversation away from what they're doing, which is, in regards to Palestine. And I think it's gratifying, as I say, to see that art is on the barricades, as it were, for this, as it often is in all of these centres and all of these ways. And it's hard to know. As I say, I'm from the Republic of Ireland. I didn't grow up during the Troubles. I don't pretend to know that. I did grow up whilst the Troubles were happening, so I do have memories of it, for sure. But I don't have that same, as I say, that generational trauma or that same, living in that world. I'm sure maybe if you were watching this and you did live during the Troubles, and we're talking about the Undertones and Stiff Little Fingers, two Northern Irish acts who had very differing ideas on how to approach creating art during that time, it should be said. This is all a part of that conversation. That is all a part of the what is at the forefront of all of this, and where all of this goes is kind of frightening in one way. But when the more you watch Mo Chara, the more you watch those lads, you're kind of glad it's them. They seem to have that about them. And as I say, I wouldn't want to wish it on anyone, but they seem to have that power about them to stand up and put it to Britain and put it to the government there as well, and put it to them through the Irish language. This week, Mo Chara demanded to speak Irish in a British courtroom. He drew a line not just in the sand, but right through the polished floor of the post-Brexit, post-truth Britain. A system that still doesn't know what to do when an Irish voice refuses to flinch, refuses to translate, refuses to say sorry just to make things easier. This is what makes this case and this courtroom moment matter. It's not about celebrity, it's not even about Mo Chara. It isn't about headlines, it's about presence, it's about the people of Palestine, it's about the right to protest, and it's about freedom of expression. An Irish voice, in Irish, standing unapologetically in a space designed to erase it. That's the rebellion, not just to music, not just chants, but the refusal to disappear, the refusal to be silenced. In a land that once tried to make Irish illegal, Mo Chara made it essential. Essential in a conversation the world is having. Let us not lose sight that this is about the people of Palestine, but also the freedom to protest, the freedom to express oneself. Last night, he said to the people of Dublin in Fairview, "I'm a free man." Expression in a time of oppression is about survival. It is about being heard and pushing against the very boundaries of the state. Here, this is against an empire itself. Indeed, this is about the people of Palestine, and it should be at the centre of what we're talking about, and indeed it remains so because of people like Kneecap, because of people like Mo Chara, and because of artists who are using their platform to express that what is happening in Palestine right now is unacceptable and it is a genocide. The reason I think a lot of Irish artists are at the forefront of this is because of that mutual understanding between the Irish people and the Palestinian people. That recognition of what is happening to them as to what has happened to us in the past. And in the British courts, the Irish language will be used in August as a way to fight and push against that. One, about the freedom of expression to talk about Palestine, and two, to put Palestine centre stage. And it is through the voice that at one point the British Empire tried to erase and try to kill. But In 2025, it has come back to haunt them, and whether they like it or not, and whether this circus is something they have constructed or not, it is there and it is at the centre, and I don't think it's something that they control. What about you? What do you think about this entire situation? And what do you think about Mo Chara asking to be interpreted in Irish in August? Do you think it is a powerful moment? What do you think about the Irish voice within British culture? What do you think about the past? What do you think about the ghosts of the past? The Johnny Rottens, the Morrisseys, the Oases, people like that? Shane MacGowan, what are your thoughts on what is happening now? And so it goes, and there it went. But before I go, thank you for watching and listening to The Last Mixtape. To help the channel grow, please like, share and subscribe for more episodes like this. And if you want to send your music on to the Count and Monty playlist though, do send him on to stephen@thelastmixtape.com and I will send him on your correspondences. But for now, that was The Last Mixtape. I was Stephen White. You were the listener and the viewer. Hey, so long.